So other factors seem to attest also to the inclination toward household life. You have a strong waxing moon in your chart, rising, that is on the ascendant, or at least close to the first house. Actually, the moon is in the 12th bhava. There's a distinction between houses and signs in Vedic astrology. It's a fine-tuned distinction, and I won't go into too many details here, between signs and houses. Now, your moon is actually in the 12th bhava, which inclines you toward renunciation. There are several planets, or several yogas, I should say, which will incline you to the renounced order of life. Now, and these are as follows. When the ruler of the moon sign, which in your case is the sun, comes under the aspect of Saturn, it is a combination for renunciation. When the strong ninth house ruler, which in your case the strongest planet you have is Mars, and it rules the ninth house, and it's in exaltation. When Mars aspects, when the ninth house ruler aspects the 12th house, as it does in your chart, and it's also aspecting the lord of the 12th house, namely the moon, there also is going to be a strong inclination toward renunciation. Now, the 12th house is one of 3 moksha houses. Moksha means that the living entity has not only performed all the prescribed duties that are obligatory within human society, but also the living entity has become somewhat fatigued or tired of the various objectives in the material world based on sense gratification, and which do not ultimately lead to higher consciousness. So when the 12th house comes under some kind of strong influence, as it is in your chart, then the soul desires liberation, wants to get out of the cycle of birth and death. As a matter of fact, there are, as I mentioned, there are 3 moksha houses. Moksha means liberation, and they are the 4th, 8th, and 12th houses. Now, all these houses are coming under some strong influences in your chart. The lord of the 4th house is also the lord of the 9th, and that's the exalted Mars. So when the exalted 4th lord, which is moksha, aspects another moksha house, which is the 12th house, we have, a yoga for renunciation and the desire for moksha. Now, the 8th house, which is Pisces in your chart, has the Sun and Jupiter in it. As a matter of fact, Jupiter inclines toward the 7th bhava. But in any case, it's in the sign Pisces in the 8th house area along with the Sun, and that empowers and of course strengthens the 8th house. So you see that all 3 of the moksha houses are strongly represented in your chart, and therefore the desire for liberation exists. And furthermore, you have a Parivraja yoga, which is the aspect of Saturn to the lord of the moon sign, to the ascendant, to the moon itself, and to the lord of the ascendant. So the ascendant, the moon, and the sun all come under the aspect of Saturn in your chart, which again is a very strong yoga for renunciation. Now, this may represent a conflict in your mind, and this conflict is very common with many devotees, and that is that there is such a strong degree of influence or energy on the moksha houses, and therefore the desire for liberation, the desire for freedom from births and deaths. Yet at the same time, in your case, there is also the strong relationship between Mars and Venus, which gives the desire for sexuality and female companionship, and furthermore to be a householder. So the way to reconcile this is to become a householder, practice the regulative principles of devotional service, engage and continue to engage in the service of the guru or your spiritual master. And this way, eventually, the more powerful renunciation yogas will take precedence, and you'll be able to renounce family life when the time is right for it. So again, later on in the tape on the other side, we're going to talk about specific time periods, specific dashas in which you're going to be able to renounce, or specific dashas during which you are likely to be engaged in householder life, etc. So let's talk about a few other factors in your horoscope now. So the waxing moon in the first house of your chart gives another need for grihastha life, because the moon, of course, rules family, and therefore there's the need for closeness and attachment and the association of family members or persons who are close to you. Of course, that can be fulfilled also in the society of devotees. But the moon is a feminine planet, and there's a strong relationship between Venus and the moon in your chart. Venus, moon, and Mars are forming strong yogas in your chart. If you look in the Navamsa chart, there is an exchange of signs between the moon and Mars. That is, moon is in Aries, Mars is in Cancer, and thus they exchange each other's signs. So that inclines you to the association of women. Moon in the first house makes for a very popular individual, someone who is charming, who has a gentle or receptive kind of quality about him. Someone who is also gentle and nurturing in nature. That is, people feel comfortable around you. You have a certain kind of compassion or a tendency to uplift or heal or to give life or sustenance to other people. And of course those are maternal qualities, and they come through the moon in the horoscope. Moon is in the nakshatra of Mula in your chart. Nakshatra Mula is ruled by Ketu. And because Ketu is conjoined with Saturn in your Navamsa chart, it represents some kind of separation from the family of birth, or it can also represent a distancing from your mother or your birth family. Incidentally, that's also another part of Raja Yoga, or yoga for renunciation. If the moon is in a nakshatra ruled by Ketu, and if there happens to be a strong relationship between Saturn and Ketu in the chart, very often the person either renounces his family of birth, or initially is somewhat distant or removed from the bonding or the close association of the family of birth. In any case, Saturn and Ketu having relationship with the moon further emphasize the need for renunciation and detachment. Without detachment from the physical body and the physical urges, particularly family life, one cannot advance on the path of liberation. But as has already been pointed out, you also have the strong Venus-Mars association. Venus, Mars, and Moon are associating closely together in your chart, so don't try to renounce artificially, or don't try to renounce or take sannyas before the time has come. Now, Mercury is in your chart in the 7th house. We started to talk about that before. Mercury is, of course, the planet of the intellect. It rules the left brain, and therefore the powers of reason and analysis. Mercury concerns the comprehensive abilities and retentiveness. And above and beyond all those things, Mercury concerns the ability with words or languages, and therefore speech and communication. And therefore to be doing the work of a translator, or to translate Prabhupada's books, for example, into the Dutch language, or to be involved with publications, translation, writing, and journalism in general are very strong traits and capabilities. I would say that perhaps those capabilities aren't the strongest, but let's just say that they will enter into your work capacity in some way, shape, or other. Now, the moon being on the ascendant and having a mutual relationship with Mercury in your chart very often produces writers. I've seen the moon also associated with the fifth house, or the fifth house ruler in astrology, which also has to do with writers and journalists, or those who work in with publications, etc. So the work that you're doing now is quite suitable for you. Mars being a strong factor also in your chart, Mars being influential in that it aspects the 10th house and the 10th house ruler, tells us that you could be quite adept at technical sciences also. And by technical sciences we mean the broad realm of, say, computer science, engineering, and those things which make use of, say, a mathematical ability or ability to use figures, facts, and information.